So, sorry guys, I had to. Okay, hello everyone, this is, from this point is the official beginning of the talk. Welcome to this evening's episode. I thought of speaking about an interesting idea, probably an idea that I think very few people have seen it this way. I named it Lao Tzu's telescope of peace. Now, Lao Tzu was not a scientist, he was a Taoist. And he has this quote, which I'm going to read for you right now. Lao Tzu tells us, if there is to be peace in the world, there must be peace in the nations. If there is to be peace in the nations, there must be peace in the cities. If there is to be peace in the cities, there must be peace between neighbors. If there is to be peace between neighbors, there must be peace in the home. If there is to be peace in the home, there must be peace in the heart. And the volume's too loud for this. I thought about this idea that Lao Tzu was saying. From peacefulness on the level of the heart to the level of the family, and going gradually up to a point where there is peace in the world. For me, I drew something which I can't show you, but I chose in the wallpaper. If you look at this wallpaper, you'll see it's like a spiral, correct? Now, instead of spirals, imagine if it was lenses for a telescope. So I began seeing that horizontally, it's as if one straight line, but vertically there is different sizes of circles. So you can say, the best way to explain this would be first to change the song. It's too intense. Hold on, guys. Okay. From the heart, imagine the heart is a circle. That means anybody who has a piece of paper with you, draw a small circle and call that the heart. Draw another circle to the right of that, call that the home. Draw another circle to the right of that, call that the neighborhood. Draw another bigger circle on the, these are all the circles are getting bigger as you're drawing them on the right. And pretty much if you draw a line through these circles, you'll notice that a spiral is a dance around the straight line. Pretty much, guys, the idea of Lao Tzu's telescope of peace is that we need to look through these lenses and attain a sort of peacefulness, a sort of balance in the dimensions. Starting from the heart, going to the family, to the neighbors, to the cities, to the nations, and to the world. In the subtitle I've written, Horizontal versus vertical communities. I felt that in today's world, when you look at, especially in the West, I would say there is a challenge against the idea of the hierarchy. You see, people are born in different parts of the world. They have different accumulated values, different types of conditioning, yet they have to work in one system. So what that means is we have pretty much created a sort of game for 8 billion human beings. Now, in this game, because the player is more important than the team, everybody in the team loses. That's just the nature. Even if you're on a team and you don't work with others, you're alone in some sense, you miss out on how much more you could have been. I know this from experience. I've been a kind of lone wolf in many moments. So a horizontal community, I would say, okay, let me first explain it this way. Let us see a community as a group of people with an aim, okay? That means whatever the aim is. If the aim is balance, if the aim is world domination, if the aim is world peace, whatever, right? It's a community. If we look at it from the horizontal angle, we are looking at where it's headed. So every ideological system out there in the world has a horizontal dimension. Do you know if there's a community attached to it? Because the people are like, why are we in this ideological system? Why are we in this house of ideology? And it's because of an agenda. So the horizontal dimension to a community, let us say, or the horizontal component to the community is its agenda in space and time, how it's choosing to go a straight line. Now, when it comes to the vertical dimension is the hierarchy. And what that means is in any sort of community, I've noticed this too many times, whether it's in corporate culture or whether it's in religious culture, whatever angle you want to see, when groups of people join together, there is a vision that pulls the moment, but there's also levels of responsibility. In certain, to the Sufis, the Sufi tradition is kind of like the Gnosticism of Christianity, but for Islam, right? So it's the spirit, kind of in quotations, esoteric spiritual denomination of these major monotheistic religions. So Christianity, Gnosticism was more getting closer to the connection to the divinity. In Sufism, in the Islamic view, it was the same as well. And both these groups, Sufis and the Gnostics, they've had actually issues with the original main religions, because one saw it beyond the form, the other saw the truth limited to the form. You know, I can tell you I've spoken about philosophy to religious people, non-religious people, all sorts of people. And let me tell you something interesting that happens when you speak about philosophy or anything that goes beyond the limits of the ideological reality that a person has accepted. There is a test. That means not everybody in this world can be a philosopher, because not everybody can in some sense be comfortable with the instability that there isn't choice yet. That means if you don't have patience, you cannot even wonder about philosophy. You'll get irritated. So the horizontal dimension is the agenda of the community, and the hierarchy is the vertical dimension. These are crucial because a person may get too allured by the horizontal dimension. That means, oh my God, this group is for a great purpose. Look at these people in this group. They're doing something great. Sure, the agenda, the horizontal dimension could be nice, could be human, but the vertical dimension is the dangerous thing. That means any person in this world, whether you're a child born a new, or in some sense you are what I mean by that is whether you're a new being to the system or you're an old being to the system, it is important to be wary that there is structures of conception trying to feed. That means for me, an ideological system, it doesn't matter how much the person smiles, the person can come and smile and be like, I love you, but the ideological system may not love you. The ideological system may be a sham. And you see, there are shams of the heart and there are shams of the mind, I would say. The shams of the mind are like illusions. They're like it was foolishness, it was trickery from the beginning. Like the person was tricked. It's like a snake oil salesman is like the sham of the mind, you know? But when it comes to uh, um, oh, sorry, that's the sham of the mind. I would say when it comes to, for example, an ideological system at its core not caring for the human design, it is a sham of the heart. That means some people, their mind may be at the right place, but their heart may not be. And some people, their heart may be at the right place, their mind not may not be. You know, it is not enough to just love a world without actually understanding what you're looking at. It's very hard to love something that the person doesn't know, because then the love is being rendered by imagination. You know, that means how many lovers have been like, does the other love me? You know? And only time can tell certain situations. You know, it's really the demonstration of the inner realms. You know, we human beings have made a whole fantasy, cultural fantasy of communication over sharing our feelings. Do you know that means it's like one of the most, you can say, profound things a human being can do, in some sense, to share what they see, to share through the eyes of who they are before they have to be the outer realms. You know, when I say your heart and mind require to be at the right place, this means that they have to become allies. You see, the heart is an emotion. Emotion really has no reason. That means when somebody feels sad, in that moment they're feeling sad, sure, there may be something that made them sad, but why they are still, why the sadness wasn't a nanosecond and why the sadness continues, that's a different issue, you know? There's some people who they don't get hurt even when they get hurt. But there's some people who get hurt before they get hurt. And so it's a testament to the strength of the heart. If your heart is bigger than your mind, the hand of wrath will be stopped by the hand of mercy, you know. But if your mind is more, it's another way. It's the other way. And this is something that I'm really trying to pilot in this life, especially for me. I find that um, you see a human being in a lifetime is not just living in like one room of being, you know. Even though there's one existential room, there's one outer realms where, like a video game, every moment we wake up in the morning, we consciously log in. We log into the outer realms, and then, you know, there's an interface between the witness that is starting from the first person view of the eyes, you know, to what is really in front of it. For me, I'll tell you, I have actually, you know, I may not seem like it, but I have had experiences with various religious practices. Various. And what that means is I pretty much cared enough to wonder why they exist. That means knowledge, there's no such thing as knowledge, that it's just, so we're in a world once your eyes are open or your eyes are closed. That is it. If your eyes are open, you can't give up because there's too many unknown variables. You don't know what's going to happen. But if your eyes are, that's when your eye. But I think the geometry of the chord fell apart. I'll say it this way. We are alive in two worlds. A world that we can only see, and a world that we are in with others. I have termed the world that we only are in the inner realms. This is where honesty lives. This is where the truth of all people's behavior lives. That means from the eyes of a person, you can know how strongly their heart has held their mind's choices. You know? And in today's world, I have learned love is an illusion. Love can be used as an incredibly manipulative technique. You know, I mean, alongside the importance of it, you know, but I can tell you that there is a naivety. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. A naivety of people trusting their the outer realms like it's their inner realms and getting deceived. In the outer realms, you got to be street smart, okay? uh, uh, in the inner realms, you got to be street compassionate. It's like this, that if one human being fails, we have failed our species. That is the standard, highest positioning of an advanced civilization. That means, think of it this way: when a person considers themselves to be weak, they don't realize it, but the mind is subconsciously being irresponsible. Anyone who has been weak on this planet, or who has entertained the role, even myself, when I was young, it was easier. I felt my weakness was at least something I was expressing, you know. But it took me a while to realize, if you see a weak self, you will endlessly walk in a weak world. And it's the challenge of the antenna. You see, think of it this way: 8 billion antennas, but in a strange way, we're tuning to what wave out of this world we get. If you're a violent person, your eyes notice violence. It's as if your mind has chosen to move that way in the multidimensional landscape. I would say, there's the saying, they say chivalry is dead. They also say, love may follow soon. But I'll tell you what the reason I'm saying that is because we're such cultural entities. We don't recognize it. We don't recognize how much of our personality is just language that has arose in the world. If you thought that life was just a purely logical journey, you suffer. Because there's so many logical things, so many dimensions where emotion out of nowhere, regardless of the strength of your reason, pulls you to a different direction. You know? And if the person just flows, it's as if, what's the difference of being alive? That means, you see, I understand that the mystic is standing under a epic mystery, which can't be avoided at the same time. It's as if, like, on some level, your body has to fulfill its aim. It's like the body is like a vehicle. You got to drive it somewhere or do something with it in this realm. But when it comes to the mind is like intelligence without a body. It's like sight that is like wind, right? So imagine like a leaf, the wind is moving the leaf, and the leaf thinks it's just itself moving. Our minds are field-like, our bodies are particular. Our minds are like waves, you know. It's like the brain is a candle, and the glow of the candle is the waves the brain gives off. You know, it's like the sensory perception is the paint for the ideological identity. But what is painting the ideological identity? The hand of the master painter. Imagine you're painting something, that your hand is different than the paint. And if the person thinks the purpose of the hand is the paint, that could be true. If they think the purpose of the paint is for the hand to use it, that could be true also. But on some level, they are different. So that it's like, think of it this way, perfect metaphor. Body, mind, soul, traditional system, archaic system. The body is paint, the mind is the brush, the soul is the hand of the painter. Okay. So right now, as I'm speaking to you, my body is being used by my mind. When I wonder about, yo, why do I have a body? The mind's like, you don't see me here? So the body's here for the mind. But what is the mind here for? I remember once telling someone that the mind, the body, it's as if for the mind, it's the mind's body is the actual physical biological body, but the soul's body is the mind. That means, think of some people who on this planet, they're like, yeah, astral projection, I want to go out of my body. Now imagine the yogis and the mystics, they were trying to go out of their mind body. That's as if the mind is the soul's body and they're trying to go out of body of a mind. So technically the only way you can go out of body of a mind that's expressing outwards is inwards. Now, what happens when you watch attributelessly all phenomenology in the moment occurring at once, regardless of you in it or not?
Hey boss, I'm Sunny Lenarduzzi and I am the
Four options. Between a self and a world. That means it doesn't matter if you're a human being, it doesn't matter what kind of creature you are, if you're conscious in this plane of existence. Let's call it Terra Dawn, you know, DAWN. That means we needed dawn to know that our Earth is Earth. So let's say in this plane of existence, Terra Dawn, it's a sort of situation where four possibilities of manifestation can arise. I have narrowed this down in my own model to 0, 1, 2, infinity, these four symbols. 0 means that you're a self in a world. This is the starting point, okay? So that when the self is in the world, it could all be an illusion. This is 0. This means that everything that is here is also not here. You know, this is a possibility. That means it could be that all our suffering, all our pains, all our joys, all our desires, all our violence, all our kindness, all of this is not here. This is a possibility. The 0 dimension. That means we need space before we can move in space, so technically space is in the room first. By the way, something a lot of people don't know, the yogis treat their mind as space, so everything in some sense is as if like their truth was here before their manifestation, so they can't be lost as beings. So after the zero dimension, it's the one dimension, the singular. This means that there is no self, there is no world, not because they don't exist, not because they're not here, because they are the same thing. You can say oneness is a totally different school of intelligence than emptiness. That means someone who wants to see the cup half full, somebody who wants to see the cup 100% full, and one who wants to see the cup 100% empty, they have totally different emotional receptions. We cannot ignore truth. That's the whole point of it. If there is a truth, it is being in the room before. Beyond the singular dimension and the one dimension, you find the dual, then you find the infinite. The dual is where chaos and order are in simulation. The dual dimension is with the two dimension, you can say. It is a dimension where language, storytelling, suffering, and joy and everything lives there. It's as if beyond the dance of right or wrong, there is a realm. And that realm is like a bigger onion layer encapsulating the realm we're in. So those who understand non-duality, they access the memory of that realm which they are in. You see, we have the impression that the body is temporary, and it may be so, but the mind, like the branch of a tree, is multiple. That means no being comes alone. And depending on the dimensional lens you want to move in duality, there's always victory and defeat. But in oneness, there is no victory and defeat, because there's nothing that has ever moved. It is one event, one glory of the light of the moon in the darkness of the forest. So like the branches of a tree, parallel selfhood will open. It is too soon, but I predicted maybe 40 years from now. People are going to get fascinated. We're going to start wondering if it's actually possible to allow the imagination to reformat the reality, because all reality was once imagined, and there used to be a time where no words existed. That is the power of the silence of the universe. It has been here. It's like literally silence has been speaking more than noise. I feel I can now see parallels to a deeper dimension of the quote that Shakespeare had, that some people are born great, some people achieve greatness, and some people have greatness thrust upon them. These three are, you can totally see it, that the body is born great. The mind is unborn, but it's achievement oriented. The mind is like hands that are not here for the hands themselves, you know? It's like it is true, a person can shake their own hand, but that's not why we shake hands. I can tell you that the body has no choice. It has to accept. The body is literally like renta elemental karma, you know? Rent a car, but for elemental karmic activity, for Maya. That means anybody named Maya in this world, I don't know if they know what their name means. Their name means everything moving. When it comes to the soul, the greatness has to be thrust. That means the body does its work. The body's life, it's I feel most people can maintain their body's life. Now the mind's life is a bit more intense. The mind's life has to do with variations of selfhood based on experiences that from those experiences there's probabilities generated. That means when I come to sit down and speak here, when a person speaks, like here's the thing, if a person was speaking for like 1 hour, sure, you know, I would say like only 1 hour in their life they spoke like okay, I'll say it like this. It's like the unknown remains because once the known task is done, we come to the unknown table. That means every profession, whoever in whatever profession, at the end of it, there should be moments in the mastery of your craft that you come to the explorer's table. You know, there's a feeling, I don't know how to communicate it, but if the species realized this is accessible, there would be a mighty shift. And that is that when the person doesn't judge, your mind stops judging, steps out of that resonance. This doesn't mean being foolish. I'm just saying you stop judging. That means your mind stops declaring solid image. That means think of the mind can generate three types of noumenon. Oh my god, it's raining and hold on guys. The electric power things, I gotta fix this. Okay. All right. So guys, it's raining. I guess I'll turn off the music. The rain's gonna be music enough. So, um, that feeling that I feel, excuse me, that I feel is important for people to have. It's just going to the explorer's table to realize that, as the Buddha said, this life is a solo journey. If there are companions, if there are comrades, if there is whatever, that's a blessing. So when the person has this unknown explorer, because think of it this way, if you just implement the advice from one dimension to a multidimensional, like if a multidimensional being just uses one dimension to orchestrate itself, it will suffer. Okay, guys, I gotta go inside. The computer's getting up. Holy shit. It's just too fascinating to forget or just call it imagination. It's as if, what is imagination? Like anti-reality, like antimatter? Matter and antimatter. You know, it's kind of interesting. It's like light enters our eyes and it goes into a prism and comes out from the other end as an ideological spectrum. So our senses, so reality is being translated to imagination and both are being watched. You know, we have this view that reality and imagination, they have to be different. But I would say they're kind of like an inverted triangle without the top horizontal part. It's as if the presence of attention has its feet on two sides of a portal. One side of the portal, subjective movement as the whole world. Behind your eyes, you can move the world. In front of your eyes, you move in the world. The world moves you. Now think of Lao Tzu's telescope of peace, this metaphor. I would say we start from the heart. That means the person. The person has to wonder about their known and unknown dimensions. Just like how a person looks at the world and they wonder, oh my God, could there be new land beyond those seas or whatever? You know. Similarly, we have to wonder about the uncharted territory of how our attention can move to ourself again. Think of it this way, that it's just attention moving. That means people, their brains are like a laser beam, and this laser beam is like everybody's pointing laser beams, you know, like those red dots on the ground, you know, like those laser beam pens that cats chase. You know, we can do known things in an unknown way, but when it comes to being on an existential level, there can be no comparison. If we were to create an android, a robotic, a human robot, you know, a humanoid robot, and we add an actual human, existentially they both exist. They both exist elementally, you know. But when it comes to experience, that's where the difference comes, right? And so really the significance of human life is not just to exist here, it's like how you experience the year. To be free in a world that has no idea why it's here it's not freedom, it's just waiting. We have all been waiting. Everyone's been waiting. We've been waiting for the world to change before us. It's like small battles that lead to a final victory, a finale. There's the battle of the personal nature and the personal dimension of the being. That means how the person is being a self in front of their own eyes. It's as if like people, I would say if we were truly first person view, we would not get sad, but because we in some sense can fathom, we are like performing in the spotlight of our own mind. Our body's performing in the spotlight of our mind. So this is why a lot of emotions comes from not attachment to just the idea. Right now I'm telling people, step out of the linguistic simulation. But you know what the mystics back in the day, they would say? They would say even your body is a simulation, right? So that's how multidimensional they were being. A great philosopher by the name of Alan Watts once said, imagine in this world, you could dream any dream. That means you were a being that anything you wanted instantly happened. Anything. You were God mode from the beginning. Now, let's say you had every kind of dream you wanted, but then at the end you came to a point where there was a loneliness in being God. Alan Watts said, after you have had all the dreams you want, then there will be a dream where you can't expect. That's meeting the unknown. It's like meeting, it's like a child that laughs has met its mind for the first time. A mind that laughs has met its soul for the first time, and the soul that laughs is the unknown. There's endless ways to filter the world. That means I could totally see our history being different if all the people in the world who were born were different. And you know what's cool? It's like when it comes to history, when it comes to the world story, it's just about what is input. It's as if everything is strangely code. And human beings are walking in the streets, feeling they have personalities and yay, like joy and whatnot. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the thing is that it's code. It's language. Language is moving behind the eyes of people as them. Right? And I would say very few people have truly seen beyond language, because those who see beyond language, their past cannot burden them. Their past was past the moment it happened. And the future becomes the past. So if someone looks at their past and they're not worried about it, they're like, why aren't you worried about the future? It's like, because it's going to become the past. You know, it's as if they ask someone, they ask the time traveler, are you from the future, or are you from, I don't know, the future's, the very future's past or something. And the time traveler's like, tomato, tomato, past, future, it's all present. So different dimensions. The mind unfolds itself. Back in the day, there was this hilarious picture of people who pretty much, like in village times, you know, like back, like, I don't know, they still probably do this, like where they get like a cloth, okay, and they pretty much get a giant cloth, they put everything they want in it, and they close the two sides of the cloth and make a backpack. Right, on his, like all balanced on one stick, right? And so wherever the person would go, they would just unfold their life, you know? This is very back in the day, you know, before suitcases. Honestly, like, I feel without, you know, without suits and briefcases, I mean, I'm personally against wearing ties. I feel that's madness. But suits and briefcases and hats have literally kept us human. Do you know that means? Think as if the forces of nature are trying to, just like there's a gravity, the wilderness of the world has a gravity. The more wild experiences your eyes get exposed to, the more wild of a person you become. So then the inner discretion must even be higher. And what if knowledge of the higher dimensions, you can only dance your way into those states? You know? Somebody had an intense, like, mystical experience. They're like, what happened? And the person's like, I don't know, man, I pretty much danced as the whole universe. You know? They're like, okay. So anyways, let me just put this picture to make it clear, because I think what I said about Lao Tzu may be a bit vague for some people who just tuned in. There we go. There we go. One cannot be at peace until they conquer fear, because as long as there's fear, there's something being held back, something missing from the picture, some pressure point, some sort of pressure in the system, tension. So we must have, we have to surpass fear to be at peace. And if we want to build a peaceful world, we have to actually build it from, strangely, some people are like, build it from the top to bottom, from bottom to top, but an advanced civilization will do both at the same time, because there's enough people to, in some sense, multidimensionally change the world. And the world is of course changing. We are just adjusting the sail, you know. Because the rationality of worry, that means when someone worries about something, if you really look at it, the worry can go endless. You can worry about like yourself, like let's say I move this coffee cup up in the air and I put it back on the table, then my mind could start worrying, oh my god, butterfly effect, could it be that I've like, you know, caused an earthquake on the other part of the world because I put my coffee down on the table, like oh my god, like you see the mind can endlessly start playing a game, and once the mind gets going, it's like it's like a film crew, you know. It's like quiet on set. Imagine if they had said that we have uh, imagine that just like how we in athletics, like in pretty much the person is testing their control over their physical existence as a spacious mind. So I'm saying just like how we can move the body, and the body is being used so instantaneously. That means people don't pray to move their to get a. They don't pray for like opening the cupboard door and getting a cup and pouring a glass of water. You know what I mean? So many things that the person, in some sense, has taken instantaneously. You know, I don't know how to say it, but some people plan for years, but when it comes to just opening a door, they do it in an instant, no doubt. And I feel that really the way the psychology is going to evolve, it's just like a person writing something, and it's like it's like a person who hasn't written anything before, picking up a pen for the first time and writing. And when you write, at first you're focused on your hand and the pen and the fingers, right? How you're holding the pen. But then it becomes so second nature, you don't think about the pen anymore. Your attention goes on the letters on the piece of paper. You know? And imagine you write a sentence every day, one sentence. After a point, you wouldn't even think about writing a sentence. Imagine you have written so much that it has come to a point where you don't have to even look at your hand. You just need your eyes to be a tiny bit open to see where the page is, to have the coordination for the positioning, right? And then you can just like have your eyes almost barely closed and just in an emotion write down your inner world. And so what happened is, first you were paying attention to the pen in your fingers, then that became second nature. Then you were paying attention to how to write your handwriting, then that became second nature. You know? Then you thought about writing sentences, that became second nature. Second nature. Everything is becoming devoured by second nature as the attention moves towards the new. So it's as if like the human being has a certain amount of attention, and there's a law of automation in nature. I think this is the best way we can say, you know, that there's just like in the future, like jobs are going to be done by robots. A lot of jobs, people are going to lose a lot of jobs because robots are going to be like, yo, we're cheaper than you. You know, it's like there has never been anything right or wrong on a rock in the middle of nowhere from like a macro view. That means it's like when you're not on Earth, you don't have problems of Earth, you know? Let's say if you were on the moon, you'd have moon problems, you know? Can you imagine, like, instead of a monkey, we sent a wolf to the moon, and the wolf didn't want to leave the moon. It just endlessly 24/7 howled, you know? All sight is a universal gift, and space is a veil, and on the other side of emptiness, there is. That means think of it as if in one type of world, everything is a potential. Not only everything is possible, everything has endlessly happened. Because everything has endlessly happened, just the mere attention in that field to anything arises the thought and brings the projection forward. So you see, there's some people who chase knowledge, there's some people who are in knowledge and they're like, how do I not know? That's, you know, I'd say that that's like closer to the mystical algorithm. Now back to the idea of horizontal and vertical communities. That's just the aim, pretty much. Just like there were, think of all soccer players on the planet. They were just kids who would play soccer, and then they, in some sense, the dimension, the same game began becoming more advanced, more advanced, more advanced, more advanced, until they found themselves in the World Cup, you know? So it is one of those things that life, it's like people should not fear repetition, and because it's a cyclical nature. That means if we wanted to really get bothered about repetition, you know, it's as if the planet has a habit. You know, that means habits are not the issue. It is really, and I don't want to say it's not the issue, but I want to say that because there are some philosophers who say habit can lead to the decay of the mind. I would say a person will be smarter if they realize everything is unknown, and the unknown is the norm. And so we're just trying to reduce the unknown little by little, not worship knowledge and fight over it. You know, language has killed too many human beings. It's ridiculous. You know, it has also killed the confidence of so many human beings. That's even more ridiculous. But what it is just movement. Everything is a movement. Right now, on some level, I have no idea how the ears of the world will hear what I say. I get to see it on the other side of the coin, you know? So if we suddenly notice, what does it mean? 8 billion beings with 8 billion different DNAs. That means 8 billion different views of the world. That means if 8 billion people wanted to build an advanced civilization, there would be 8 billion types of advanced civilizations in you can say, in around time. So 8 billion people with 8 billion versions of an advanced civilization, the strategy would be they would all aim towards that advanced civilization. That means you live for the advancement you can see, your mind can envision, and eventually, as it's like a mountain, the ultimate archetype of the advanced civilization is a civilization so advanced, the moment it achieves something, it achieves something every second, so it can't be defined. That means imagine if you had so many achievements, every moment you had an achievement, and imagine you didn't have any achievements. They would be the same. You know, after some point, we won't be able to, we can't measure emptiness, and we can't measure infinity, the two immeasurables. And so there's a giant theatrics going on. There's the theatrics of the inner realm. That's why I think for me, like I don't know. It's like being a person is very common, but to be a presence and aware of how that personhood, that personality, literally like a hologram light simulation reprojects. I'm saying that all of this is just, we're playing the same game but on different scales. And if a person is really just at peace, that means you're like, okay, you know, I've appeared like a Pokemon. It's like a wild human being appeared in the solar system, you know. And the Pokeball is language and culture and ideology, and the list goes on. I would say we would have to technically live for two civilizations. A civilization that we see, the civilization that is in the domain of consciousness. Every person has their own version, as I was saying earlier. And the civilization that is what the collective unconscious deserves. You see, there's sometimes, I've noticed, at least in myself, that when it comes to behavior and choice, it's not just a sort of rational dimension. It is also how the emotions, it's as if it's like a crew. It's as if your physical existence is a member, your subjective experience is a member, you know, and the background of some sort of emotion between the subjective experiencer and the unknown witness. I feel that's where emotions come from. It's as if all these have to walk together. You see, it's like that's how civilizations rise. That means people are not doing, if we wanted our civilization to fall, everybody's doing the right thing. All the violent and savage, chaotic people, it's like, good for you. You're getting to the outcome, you know, of the food. You know, it's honestly this. Candle feeling is so real that moments are melting from the space-time continuum into the void. You know, it's as if there are some people who they're like, what is after death? And there's some people who are like, who was I before I was a who? That means it's like some people fear the death. Some people are like, who's dying here? I didn't figure it out. I didn't realize who this is, you know? And when I say who this is, you see, I'm not saying the cultural fabric. I'm not saying like an alphabet of imagery can replace the soul's unknown yearning. It never can. Freedom is like trust in the bigger, strangely. And the bigger is not big until the simple, it's like simple dimensions have to be set into place then. It's like, think of it as a battlefield. Think of it as a battlefield where it's not about one by one sending the units and the army of the other destroying. Do you know, it's about multi-dimensional offensive. Do you know? That means right now we are treating ourselves as beings in one dimension and we're like, oh my god, war, tanks, chaos. But if we were multidimensional, that means I wouldn't be surprised that in atmospheres, beyond the atmospheres of the inner sky, there is a bit of a conflict. There's turbulence up there, you know. This turbulence is a suggestion of identity positioning. You see, we have bodies so we don't forget. We think that the human being, something happened, we forgot. But I'm telling you, nature updates through forgetting what it learned. That's it. it holds something, let's go. Hold something, let's go. And we're like, oh my God, our universe is being made in the process. Can you imagine a ninja met God and the ninja was like, why do you do this? And that's when the shadow actually saw the light, you know. It's not advanced enough, honestly, humanity. And it needs to have multidimensionality at work. Right now, our bodies are stable, our minds are multidimensional. Imagine once the body has served in the battlefield, like imagine your biological body at the end of the transition point in this life. Your biological body is like imagine all the cells, all the atoms, all the periodic table that you were animate as. Do you know all of those? Imagine them as if they were in some sense soldiers on the battlefield serving your mind's existence. So I feel that people should have an honor for their existence. That means whatever, whether right or wrong, the person just comes to simplicity and then watches how the eyes or the inner eyes move. That's it. You know, when complex situations come, simplicity is the balance. It's literally like the karma is the white blood cells of a universal organism. Or I should say justice is the white blood cells of a universal organism. And it's just phenomenal how much of sight is just tip of the iceberg. That means people are like, I don't know what to do in this life. But it's just the tip of the iceberg, do you know? Freedom seems to be, in this modern age, to be an effort of the mind's life. That means our bodies have been more the focus of our unknown attention, our known bodies. Now we have to know how we are being a mind in the moment. And everybody can do this. You can just go sit in a moment and just watch your mind like you watch a film. If you don't have an opinion, if you forget all the ideas and you start from scratch, like imagine it's not reinvent the wheel, it's reinvent the psyche. In today's world, there's an information explosion. People have seen this planet as a prison. They have seen this planet as a school where you liberate, as a sort of place where you can't be imprisoned. You're only becoming more and more kind of view. You know, one view you're lost in the less, another you're found in the more. So this is the most crucial thing. In 2020, I would say human psychology has reached a point that it is self-reflectively awakening to the multidimensional possibility of identity. That means we used to treat people, we used to be objects, literally animals, like animal level behavior, object level behavior. Now that we have come to the domain of dialogue, it's subject level behavior. But like through this subject level behavior, which has led to the linguistic simulation, poets and different sort of mythologies have tried to find the glitch in the system and break the walls of the simulation. And what has happened is we have come to a point where we're like, okay, what do? We're not just an object, we're not just a subject, so we can't just be a character in a story, and we can't just be nothing ever here, you know? So it becomes something where it has to become, for the first time, imagine you were an actor and you felt you knew it was an act, and it was in some sense all like a performance of, it was all staged and whatever, all existence was a simulation, you know, a fake show. And so suddenly in the middle, it's like the actor that has felt he was an actor, the actor suddenly realizes, no, the act has unknown variables. That means regardless of what the stage is, the moment, the performance, the value of what happens, that means it's as if before I say a single word, do you know how many time travels are like, oh my God, you know? So I'm saying poetically that the mind of man can leap beyond time. The same way I can see an object and in my inner realms I can visualize that object hovering in the air then slowly spinning, I could also in my inner realms notice in some sense all subjective conceptual views. You know, it's as if like when you get tired of playing with stuff, you play with your mind. That's pretty much desires more advanced. That means it's like, you know, is it better to have desires or be a conscious human being with desires, or better to be an unconscious animal? It's like, no, it's better to have desires. But what is better than having just desires is to recognize what you already are, and then maybe what you desire you already have, right? You know, there are some people who, it's like some moments in life, it's like, I don't know, love is its own teacher, whether kind or cruel. So there is rooms made of objects and there's rooms made of subjects. These rooms made of subjects are beliefs. Beliefs are set in stone linguistic designs, right? So the horizontal dimension of any community, let's say you're a person in a religious community, I don't know, non-religious community, official community, unofficial community, whatever, right? You can totally examine the horizontal, the agenda of the group, and you can also examine what is being asked to be required for that agenda. Do you know, it's as if like, I honestly feel that a lot of religions, I dare say it, or I should say it this way, the echoes of the ancient religions, they are just hierarchical mousetraps. That means it's as if like it's kind of like the person's like, I love everyone, but out of this love I want to conquer. Do you know what I mean? It would be like, oh my God, totally wrong view of love. It's like, I love conquering. Oh my God. Pretty much they're aliens, guys. Ideological institutions of any sort, they're an alien, and it's like the moment you go inside it, it devours you. When it devours you, it starts defining you. When it defines you, it's as if the ideological system has become the alpha to your own free will, you know? That means imagine if there were like two wolves, you know, growling at one another, and the alpha wasn't backing down. Do you know? And it's as if like the ideology of the institution hasn't backed down because it's ancient, right? So the person has no choice but to back down, you know? I'll tell you, so many people, they don't believe, they are backed down into believing. Because really, the view is that there was one sentence I remember from religion I heard in my youth, and I was born in Iran. So there's religion there, you know, church and state are not separate. And that one sentence was that only the truth knows what's in your heart. So everything else is show and tell. Everything else, it is either trying to move the outer realms or the inner realms, but the truth is the whole thing regardless. And there was a moment where it's like a person cannot get introduced to religious ideology and not wonder, wait a minute, if everything is God's will. Listen to this part of the talk as if from a theological lens. If everything is God's will, then there is either no mistakes or everything is a mistake. Do you see? The religion was just pretty much, I could tell you, it was a collective being. Think as if 8 billion human beings can have a relationship with one another, and then 8 billion human beings can have a relationship with a collective being beyond themselves. Now, whatever you call it, some sort of, so back in the day, before religions, it was as if like Earth was the god of the world, you know? The pantheists saw nature as the embodiment of the living truth. I mean, what else could it be, you know? I feel truth is like silence. That means, or like the ripples on the pond settling. You cannot take it from the world. You cannot chase it. You cannot get it. You know, you cannot own it. You cannot use power to find it. You know, it is only when all the ripples settle, when all the efforts, as if the person is treating the moment strangely, as if, imagine technically, if creation and destruction happen simultaneously, that would be non-existence. Imagine it like there's like a Venn diagram. One is creation, one is destruction. That middle space is technically nothing. Either we're infinitely being created or infinitely being destroyed simultaneously, and we're just tuning into which side we want. Or the silent mind just awakens itself. I think that's the purest teaching of nature. You see, nature doesn't speak, but it is alive. And so it is a living teaching of how, before meaning, language, concepts, and all of this, life is its own dimension of occurrence. That means I have honestly, I don't know, like, how a person can have such, like every human being has such a complex ability with the use of, like Noam Chomsky was saying it, when you look at all the other animals, actually in other species compared to the human being, we have such a sophisticated ability with language that it's as if like the wonder to participate is instant retention. People are fighting over freedom, but what if you had only one lifetime to be free? You know, there was this deity figure, this god back in the day in Vedic times named Rama, and some person came up to Rama and they would talk about enlightenment, moksha, and the person came to Rama and it's like, Rama, why do you have to work for enlightenment? Like, why, man? Why do you have to work for it? And Rama says, you don't understand. Like in the lesser dimensions, the beings can't ask the question. That means when you look at lesser life forms, they're lost in their loop of their animal instinct. They're too animal to be human. That's the cost of violence to the person who causes it. They lose their humanity. They take one step away from how they were human. figure, this god back in the day in Vedic times. There we go. And gods above, they have so many offerings, so many heavens, that they don't need to ask the question. It is only in the human position where there's the blessing to ask the question. This is what Rama was saying. apologize, there's some interruptions from my end. The human life is energy. It's an energetic development. Sculpted by natural selection. We are an object evolved into a subject to itself. That's a very strange thing. Now, as a subject to the object, the subject has control, has velocity, so it can control its direction, and you can choose the speed you go. So when it comes to the outer realms, pretty much the attention has to choose, has to direct, and then has to maintain, which is the speed, like how your foot is on the gas pedal. So in the outer realms, we can be in the driver's seat or in the passenger seat. In the inner realms, you cannot notice it until you are in the driver's seat. That means the person has to notice that there is something more than what they see if they want to see beyond the sensory perception. So literally, desire cannot exist in our dimension. Any ideological system that doesn't see a collective freedom to walk with other ideological systems is in some sense separate from the world's aim. You know, it's as if like, how can we build a world where the past is not wrong in? The only way is to keep the past in a painting. That means to treat all ideological systems in the past as their own rooms of truth. The vertical dimension of communities is what really draws in people to have the horizontal dimension alpha their psyche. The body has to learn to ride the waves of the laws of nature. The mind requires to abide. And the soul Oh, the soul is the mystery. It is the unknown X variable in any sort of known equation. There we stand in our multidimensional birthright. You know, it's the past has to be treated like artwork, and the future has to also be treated like artwork. And it's only in the present where people are treating reality so serious that in some sense destruction is allowed. You know, an advanced civilization needs balance, needs in some sense solid ground, you know, to build the foundations of, right? Right now the issue with civilization 1.0, our current civilization, is that they did not have the ability. The species, there was so little known about really the world that we couldn't set firm foundations. So a lot of people who knew human beings are being born on this planet, but they're living through past ideological systems with shaky foundations. The biggest question when it comes to truth and belief is that is truth in the room or not? That's it. If truth is in the room, all individual behavior is elusive. All that in the illusion, in some sense, feels real is not there. That means if you feel energetically, you're eternal. As an energetic being, you're eternal. But as a human psychological entity with a speech and a name tag, that's not eternal. That's at best a statue. You know how many ideological systems currently, this is 2026, unbelievable, but so many ideological systems, and this is pretty much the fishing hook of the consumer's weakness, where promises slowly make the person stop relying on their own generation, their intelligence's generation. That means imagine there were, I'm just saying this world spins around itself. And and it's honestly, we're just setting into motion a smaller earth in the earth. It's as if somebody, started a wager, and the person's like, I can fit the earth on a piece of paper. And people were like, no, impossible. Scientists got angry. Everybody got angry. Then the person came and wrote the word earth on the piece of paper. That's how language is so real nowadays. We have to add an additional dimension to counter the Hunger Games of ideological systems that wear masks of love, but they want to clone the world like themselves. This has to be attended to. This doesn't mean its attendance should be violent. We should always have a militant solution. There's a saying that Sun Tzu says, the true warrior defeats the opponent without moving his sword, without touching his sword. That means violence is the game of fools. That means, so anyway, Isaac Asimov said it, violence is the last refuge of the incompetent. That means when you don't have the skill to do something peacefully, you have to do it violently. Or you justify yourself, the subconscious justifies, yeah man, this is a cruel world, it's okay to be cruel in it. You know, the mind is like, you know, they said it's a lousy master, but it's a great servant. And it doesn't mean the person should just command their mind. You might not believe it in some parts of the world. There are people who are still playing games of commanding beings in other dimensions. You see, there's some stories that never were on Earth, but they appear on Earth. That means the story didn't start on Earth, but it began to itself on Earth, for example. As far as I'm concerned, like light programmed matter into becoming a brain, you know, with the potential of whatever particle that was there. So just for me, it's like you're talking about cellular life. It's like miracle, like it's mind blowing. Do you know? A self-replicating cell. We are made. A self-replicating gene. The picture always changes in a changing world. If truth was made of was truly in language, then it's as if a person could have heard it once and then stopped caring for it. Anything, but the truth is beyond language. That's the whole point, and that's why language is being sold to people as if it can suffice, like it can take away the yarning of their own eyes for the unknown. That's something that nobody can teach you. You know, you just have to freak out that you're mortal and you're in a giant world, and what are you going to do about it? And that's how mystics are, you know, open their eyes. It's a surreal sincerity. That's the power of honesty. It doesn't forget the depths. And think of it this way. You think of it in honesty in, like, let's say, I don't know, back in the day, in a town hall meeting or something, compared to the personal dimension. And you know what's fascinating? You know how many movies there are where they show the hero sacrificing itself? You know why that happens? Because we have no purpose. We have no purpose. We are acting. I will declare it. 8 billion human beings are acting. Unless there is a collective sitting at the table, somehow a network of eyes that cared to see how the world turned again. Because really, it's pretty binary, human life. You can sum down all of human life to effort or no effort. Literally, when you wake up in the morning, there has to be effort for you to get out of the bed or not. And based on how important you make the outer realms, that effort comes. And it's the same with the inner realms. If the inner realms are important for you, if it's sincerely important, not out of a desire of power, control, or like, you know, contact, like that's child's play. That's like foolishness, you know. because the whole point of it is not that we go into the mind of the invisible other, and the invisible other comes into our body. It's not like, it's like that's like bad interpretation from back in the day. What really is taking place is attention is realizing it is space. So you technically, I gave this metaphor where I'm like, imagine there is a sphere, okay, a sphere, and made of, for example, green, a green sphere. Imagine inside this green sphere, imagine there's a blue sphere, okay, light blue sphere, light green sphere, light blue sphere, okay. And so this light blue sphere that's smaller, that's very small at the center of this giant green sphere, imagine that blue sphere is the mind. That giant green sphere is the body. Why am I using this analogy? Because the mind is at first limited to the body. The child doesn't even have a personality. There's no teaching a newborn child. Do you know what I mean? It's like there's no psychology. So the attention is limited to the body. The body is become the teacher of the mind. Whatever is present in the moment is learning from how the physical body is being animate, temperature, you know, the child crying, moving its limbs, breathing, all of that, you know. So now imagine this blue sphere at the end of the life, this small sphere called the mind inside the body at the end of the person's lifetime has grown bigger, 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 and has reached even a point where it was neutral to the green sphere. That means the person noticed the inseparability of their mind and body, but then it reached a point where the mind, there was too much living done. There was too much, the eyes had been exposed to more than just looping patterns. You know, so it's as if first the green sphere, the body sphere is bigger, the mind sphere is smaller in the body. As the person lives, and especially communication advances this, the blue sphere gets bigger, bigger, bigger. So at the beginning of your life, your mind is living in your body. As the person starts walking down the mountain, in some sense, you start being the other way, where you start realizing your body is living in your mind. And that's called conscious living, if you choose. At any moment, a person can choose to dismiss their own potential and descend to the animal in the cave. At some point, it's like nobody has a personality. It's just light, like flashlights in a dark room. Spotlights of attention. And based on how that spotlight of attention receives the world, the expression is bound to that. The eyes of our eyes are beyond these eyes. Yet we stand suffering in accordance to what we see through these. It's like being alive is like being the tip of an iceberg that's melting. And you're like, okay, so what is the outcome? I'm gonna return to an elemental level, you know, an energetic attention level where there is, in some sense, design. I feel there's different ways. In my personal view, the future of the species, I've seen it, we're pretty much going to become an airport and then an interstellar airport. So there's an evolution where we have cities right now that are on the ground, then we're going to have leaping cities, then we're going to have sky cities, magnetic cities, then we're going to have sky cities. After we have sky cities, we're going to have interstellar cities. That's going to be like some, you know, Elysium level, you know, degree of, you know, like a metropolis in outer space, you know. I think it's a surreal feeling. We don't realize it. Like, if we were I think astronauts realize it, that it's so empty up there. Yet it's just everything, the bigger truth is there. So I would say in this episode, the audience or whoever you are in this life, you can always use Lao Tzu's telescope of peace, and you can even scan the any sort of institution, which is whatever kind of ideological institution, through these levels. So look through Lao Tzu's telescope of peace and see that how much does the ideological system give freedom to the world before it gives freedom to itself. And as we move on to the era of advanced communication, there's going to be no good or bad anymore. That's too old school. There's just going to be efficient and inefficient. The efficient is multidimensional because we're just a bunch of creatures on a rock. Like, we can't ignore the multidimensional. The multidimensional is now has to be dabbled with more than ever. People have to, human beings have to try to communicate in advanced ways, then try to continue somehow. The species. So that's the thing. It's as if it's like we have come to the next great battlefield of human evolution. You can say back in the day for the primitive creature to just find shelter, that was like as advanced as like, oh my god, this creature built an advanced civilization. You could say like the most basic things, but now it's coming to the level of the sight. So if your mind can see something in multi-dimensional ways, I would say the best thing is the person reserve their choice of action, right? Because let me tell you something, just like with emotions sometimes take time, so the person has to sit down, and maybe like after 7 minutes, like an emotion of sadness leaves if you just sit still and silent and watch it, right? Emotions tend to be like kind of you can say your subconscious poking you. You're like, what do you want, emotions? And the emotion wants to be released, usually. There's this poet named Rumi. He says, out beyond ideas of right doing and wrong doing, there's a place, I will meet you there. He means that when you look at the simpler levels of human intelligence, they fade from being personalized. So when a person wonders about the truth of what is actually going on, they're being, in some sense, they're self-inquiring into a central way their attention is before it was human. Right? And when I say before it was human, not to create some cool idea about it, but just to say that it's as if we are being, it's been there in the language all along, human beings, rather than that being one thing. It's as if like the being has always been there. The being is like where the potential energy comes from, right? So the being is not separate, but anytime there is a doer, it's separate. In certain mystical schools of thought, that some people are like, oh my god, eternity is so beautiful, I want to be eternal. In some schools of thought, they're like, we've been eternal, we've been as endless. When you see when a person sees that civilization has forgotten its children need art to be alive. The mind needs space to create the new. If that is denied, that's literally inner extinction. Okay, that means George Orwell, the reason 1984 was a nightmare was because there was no room for novelty. Like, the rebellion was simple acts of just seeing something new, right? And this strictness of having truth be just ideological, imagine what can happen. Imagine like not just religions, if ideological have giants, which are like groups of people, right? And these are all different ideological systems. I feel all these ideological systems have to find an allegiance. That means I was thinking, how do you get the nations to unite, for example? It's like, why isn't the United Nations just a room for one nation? Why is it a room for all the nations, right? So I thought that's impossible because people have identity. So you can't ask like a classroom of students to be one student, be like one student, right? But you can say that the classroom of students can identify as a bigger group. So there's technically no like beyond nationalism we can't fathom, and it's because our human nature has not gone into a decency resonance. So right now it's this strange thing where behavior defines the type of information that walks this earth in the eyes of others and even yourself. That means I can't tell you how many people on this planet I've just been the background of, like a person on the background. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, as if imagine walking in a busy, like I remember when I went to London, the streets were so crowded, and it was a sort of situation where it's like the person kind of feels like it's like how many people are subconsciously like am I being a memory for them in this moment? You know, imagine a busy like sidewalk. So I'm saying like it's there's something there that our lives are interconnected. The moment we choose to be an individual, the moment the body moves up, you've become a your ultimate consciousness. We care for freedom, but we judge as if nobody can be free. We are basking in the illusion of a better world, yet we're not bringing it about. And the only way is two ways. Either people's behavior in the outer realms changes, like I don't know, like I don't know, Superman comes and says something and people change, or we have this totally different view where it has to start from within. So for the first time, no longer rebellion to the outer realms changing first in order for the inner realms to change, but for the inner realms to change first before the outer realms change. Right? Any being who has an ability to be selfless in their inner realms, you can watch any moment, and the moment can't touch you. But the moment there is just a little feeling of desire, guys, keep in mind there can be a Q&A at the end. My attention isn't on the chat section because I'm trying to paint something over here, for God's sake. But the mind has to be at peace. That's the most important thing. If your inner realms are not at peace, your outer realms will be tense. You know, it's like somebody trying to say something, but it's, you know, they say it with a harsh tonality. You know, it's as if you could say something very nice with a very harsh tone, and it doesn't come across as nice for example. Anyways, guys, I'm pretty much at the end of the talk. Just in this episode, I wanted people to know that communities are just natural. We are social creatures, and it's an achievement. The more minds in one room, the more dimensions can be added, you know. And one has to care how they're being a human being if they care for the species. If you don't care for the species, in an instant you can descend to the level of a rude savage animal. It's very easy, you know. So the human nature has to hold something, right? It's like, think of the samurai. They had to have some sort of value system to be that intense, like that. You know. So it's we can't have anarchy equating freedom, because that's the laziest sort of freedom, you know. Yeah, break everything to start a new world. That's never, it works that way. If the person isn't in a calm mind, it's as if you're not in a calm room of life. So the karma is going to be like you've entered that room, you know. I can tell you, even a person can, just by the mere whim of changing their attention, they can change how the archetypal spectrum where their personality arises from. Because really what it is just like an atom is made of smaller particles. I remember in another talk I spoke about it as the eventum. The eventum is like an atom of an event. It's as if the smallest unit of the psyche, I considered it as an event. And then this event is made of smaller events. So that means if right now I'm vocalizing and being a human being, like speaking as a personality, this is on the background in the inner realms a probability field, because that's how the mind works. The mind is actually experiencing multiple senses of self, but the body is only in one self. This is why we have choice, we have free will. That free will is there because that free will is in an invisible room where our imagination, memory, and visualization dwell. And I'm saying invisible room, but it's really how we exist as a subject that is observable to the unknown experiencer, you know. So even philosophers had this term qualia, suggesting that in front of your eyes, so like right now I'm looking at a coffee cup. This coffee cup I'm seeing, it's like the visual, like it's a Tim Hortons coffee cup. The Tim Hortons coffee cup is like that is the actual experience of reality. But as I'm staring at this Tim Hortons coffee cup, there's like another room between my eyes and my brain. I'm saying this poetically. Where in that space there is subjective overlaying and extraction of what the phenomena implies. That's called qualia. That's Immanuel Kant called it noumenon. It's one of the most unique things, and it's the secret of creativity, that there's no such thing. The world is changing at different speeds in accordance to how you hold your attention, right? And how much you care for you notice the unknown is here before the known. Because if you don't see the unknown here before the known, you want to use only a known system, so it becomes really ideological Hunger Games. Yeah, one side punches, the other side punches back. It's like, what, for eons we're gonna like punch each other? Like, so there has to be some sort of a resolve, some sort of maturity level in ideological institutions. That means, imagine, in some sense, we had this view where we're like all religions had one department where it was just pure whatever the religion was, and then they had one department which it was the religion's integration in a collective world. That means we start treating religions like the imaginations of groups of people, but not religion, all ideological systems, right? And we have inner, and because it's not, there's imagination and reality, they're like two sides of the same coin. You know, it depends on if you're associating to, if you're looking through space first or you're looking through matter first. Multidimensional tolerance, efficiency, and all of this comes from vision. Your eyes are the secret to this world, though, and it's not just what you see; it's the one looking. That's the question mark that every person should kind of grab and start like harvesting crops like a farmer. And what I mean by harvesting crops, that means wondering about experiences. It's like we have dishonored freedom. The language of the mind, here's the thing, if a person, it's easy for their own psyche to attack themselves, their psyche becomes very open to attacking others, because it justifies its own dissension by bringing down the world. So there's like this view, this is again a sort of theological observation, but there's this archetype of the in theology of God and the angels, and it's as if one of the angels doesn't listen to what God wants. The truth, God is like truth, so truth, it's as if one of something God created. And here's the mystery: we don't know if it could be there never was. It was all God, you know, pulling the levers. From a theological lens, I'm saying this, guys. Keep that in mind. So the idea of the fallen angel was that the angel made a mistake. Instead of accepting it was wrong, it was the angel tried to make the whole world mistaken. Do you see that archetype? That means instead of abiding by truth, we want to change the whole world to be exactly like us, yay. You know, it became something where instead of it being easier, so think of it this way. when it's not easier to change yourself, but to change the world, you can say you can become a sort of fallen nature. But if it's easier to, in some sense, change yourself before changing the world, then it becomes a kind of nature that abides. Because in all the mystical teachings, I am telling you, literally, like, what could the mystics say? Buddy, it goes beyond language. You sit down and your eyes reveal to you who you have always been. What else can happen? We are nature. That is the only strength that can't be taken away. You know? There was a scene in this show called Attack on Titan, Shingeki no Kyojin, where it's as if like the monkey game's gotta stop at some point. I feel boredom is the most liberating experience. In boredom, the person can notice the speed of their mind quicker than the outer ones. Okay, so before I end off, I felt like going into a quote tunnel. Okay. So there's 48 poems. I'm gonna open this part to the audience. Guys, actually, I need a quick intermission. I'll be back. Okay, so I'm back to continue. Um, let's see, number 22. So, this poetry work is called Rahmana. Anyways, the questioner's quest. The questioner's quest. How often have you questioned the questioner's quest? What has made Midas get tired of mythological gold? Can the free be transcendentally pure beyond heavy knees? When Orion asks for its belt back, the atmosphere might fear itself. The grace of any seeker is an awareness to a moment within all. When faces turn themselves into the audacity of the kindest mankind, heaven and earth will dance as one. The road may be longer than words with their own agendas, but despair was never a desperate pair. All children must climb beyond the mountains of their own self-conceived thoughts. And that's how it ends. All children must climb beyond the mountains of their own self-conceived thoughts. Yeah. Let's see what number 9 is. Transparency of the sky. In the oneness of life, there's only one voice. The eons smile as time and space come and go. Can eternity forget its temporal walk? Can the sky change colors like a Photoshop brush? Let the crystals in your eyes shine brighter than the territory of words. A truly free man cannot die. Did you know that? If yes, then you are more free than the wind in spring. Do not fear the winter of your dreams. In the moments to come, there is only one moment to be. Did you know life cannot die? Perhaps this is why the transparency of the sky never lies. Yeah. $36, let's see. $36 is titled "The King Threw a Rock at Me." Alright, the king threw a rock at me. Are gold coins a nuisance for a beggar that has no pockets? What is a beggar when we are all trying to be free from our ignorance? Is life so kind to allow genius to continue its walk? Enough questions. Where does the answer come from? Trust the glory of existence's blessing that is you. We're all rainbow children in the prism of truth. Whether the Floyd is pink or she is singing out her lungs on stage, we're all seeking the moment of moments. If you are confused, this is beautifully important, for there has been a fusion of cons. Do you trust the writer with the divine tongue? Some blind men speak too much through all that they see. Can the moment be free? If you're a king, don't throw rocks at yourself, for existence has always been in the same place. Doubt does not belong here. Wow. Okay, new number is coming, 20. By the way, people can share if they... okay, let's see, 20. The calligrapher's ignorance, that's number 20. There we go. The calligrapher's ignorance. What makes the brush move on its own? How does night and day translate onto the page of void existence? There are many paths to the absolute, but when you look within, there is only one. Can the realness of the void be a fading cloud into an empty sky? What has the limitless promised you that you feel the limited must give you? Do not fear the incongruency in thought found through personal and impersonal shifts. We are all the changing children of eternity. Is God's blood moving through your veins? Some calligraphers are ignorant for they think the brush is theirs. Truth is not a battle in the trenches, whether your freedom is formless or formless. The sacred void leaves none misplaced, for through confusion the con is seen. What if the calligrapher was dreaming his dream? That was it, and guys, the last one, it's the one right after that called The Silence That Kept Going. I'm going to read this for myself. Excuse me. The silence that kept going. What is a noisy truth that silence cannot bear? My beloved friend, could silence be the truth of all truth? How has honesty found the fingertip of madness pointing the wrong way? Some questions are here to dissolve all that can be dissolved. Did you know there is one sacred moment in creation? The cosmic smile is growing in our eyes. For when labs replace labyrinths, men are lost as much as mice. In the ocean, all drops are one. Okay, is this okay, first of all, let's have a mic check. Can you guys hear me now? Just in the chat section, right? Yes, no. Like, how's the volume now? Somebody listening to this is gonna be like, who is he talking to? It's like the chat section. Okay, here, I'll do it again. This way it's only my sound, and it should be the loudest possible now. So, the 20th verse, bro, you're counting this? So you mean the last poem? I could just read the last poem again, in case if part of it was inaudible. The silence that kept going. What is a noisy truth that silence cannot bear? My beloved friend, could silence be the truth of all truth? How has honesty found the fingertip of madness pointing the wrong way? Some questions are here to dissolve all that can be dissolved. Did you know there is one sacred moment in creation? The cosmic smile is growing in our eyes. For when labs replace labyrinths, men are lost as much as mice. In the ocean, all drops are one. And that was the last poem, guys. I'm pretty sure I'd read this one before in other talks. But anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I'll end it here. This Lao Tzu's telescope of peace is just a metaphor. Lao Tzu didn't own a telescope. But his vision was like a telescope when he saw the evolution of society and culture. And if you have simplistic, peaceful mastery in like at the beginning, then the ending is going to be, the complexity of the end is going to be more maintainable, you know. So anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I'll be on Discord for those interested. Blessings.